Madison called me just as I hesitantly picked up the phone. Without waiting for a greeting, she began speaking hurriedly. "I told you I'd be late tonight, right? It's tough pretending to go to work when you're unemployed." "Oh, I forgot. It's not my concern anymore. So, don't bother coming back here. I've kindly sent your stuff to your parents' place. This is it for us. Don't contact me again, understood?" With a calm reply, I thanked her for sending my things and wished her well, then ended the call. I'm Grace, 37, juggling work and home duties. I often work remotely, but sometimes go to the office. I live with my husband, Liam, and his parents, making us a family of 4. I met Liam through a friend 3 years ago, and we bonded over our love for movies. After a few dates, Liam shyly asked if I'd date him with marriage in mind. I immediately said yes, and our relationship began. Liam is quiet and shy, but also kind and genuine, which I find very attractive. Although I was never keen on marriage, I began to see a future with him. 5 months later, he proposed and we got engaged. His parents have always been kind, making it easy for us to live together post-marriage. There were no typical in-law conflicts. My mother-in-law, understanding of my busy work schedule, would help out with household chores, and I'd reciprocate when she was unwell. My father-in-law was always supportive, ensuring our home was a warm place. However, Liam's sister, Madison, was a concern. Married young and living an hour away by train, we rarely saw each other. But Madison had a harsh demeanor. The first time we met, she insulted me for marrying at an older age and hinted I was after the family's wealth. Her remarks shocked my parents and me, but my in-laws defended me, preventing further issues. Madison occasionally made harsh calls, which I chose to ignore. One day, while everyone was out, Madison unexpectedly visited, visibly pregnant. Surprised, I greeted her, recalling our last phone conversation where she hadn't mentioned her pregnancy. She brushed past me and entered the house. After making a drink for Madison, who had settled into the living room, I listened as she began to talk. "I've decided to move back in with my parents to have the baby, so I'll be staying here from today. I'm already in my 8th month," she explained. Curious, I asked if her parents knew about the pregnancy. Madison shrugged it off. "I haven't told them yet. I have my reasons, and it's none of your business." Despite her apparent discomfort, Madison quickly changed the subject when she noticed I was about to get back to work. "You're still not working, huh? Maybe it's time you thought about getting a job," she remarked, misunderstanding my situation again. I tried to explain once more that I work from home, but she wasn't convinced. "Right? As if lying helps. It just looks like you're playing on your computer all day," she scoffed, recalling a time she saw me with headphones. Frustrated, I clarified that I was on a remote meeting call, but Madison remained skeptical. "You're just after my father's retirement funds, aren't you? I've seen through your scheme. I won't let you succeed," she accused, convinced that I married Liam for money. No matter how much I argued, she wouldn't listen. That night when Madison returned unexpectedly, the in-laws were shocked but couldn't turn away their pregnant daughter and reluctantly welcomed her. Although I wasn't thrilled, I agreed to live together out of respect for my apologetic in-laws. Madison claimed to be good at household tasks but did little, leaving behind a mess every time she used the bathroom. When I asked her to clean up after herself, she snapped, "I'm pregnant. You're not working. You should be cleaning." Madison frequently complained about our simple meals, demanding more nutritious food for her baby. Despite repeated reprimands from the in-laws, her attitude remained unchanged. The household chores, which I once shared with my mother-in-law, now became more taxing as Madison treated us like servants. I tried discussing Madison's behavior with Liam, but he dismissed it, saying, "That's not my problem, handle it yourself," showing a lack of concern for family matters. This made me question his sincerity and support. Enduring patiently, I continued to manage my workload from home, attending important meetings and organizing tasks. One day, while taking a break at a cafe, my phone rang. It was Madison, calling to say she would be late tonight, again hinting at being unemployed, a misunderstanding she still held on to. When I answered the phone, Madison immediately launched into her point. I had to step out this morning pretending to go to work, but oh yeah, I forgot, it's not my business anymore. So, don't bother coming back. I've sent your things to your parents' house out of kindness. This is it between us. Don't contact me again. Confused, I asked her what she meant. Clearly satisfied with herself, Madison explained. While my parents were on a trip, I snooped through your room. Remember I said I'd uncover the truth? Well, I found divorce papers in your closet, with your part already filled out. Looks like Liam tried to mimic your handwriting. Seems he's tired of you too, huh? Surprised? Yes, but what did you do with the papers? I asked. Madison burst out laughing and said, I filled out Liam's part and sent them in. I felt sorry for my brother, and it's problematic if our family's assets go to someone unemployed like you. Won't Liam be upset by that? I inquired, concerned. Madison wasn't worried. Liam must have sensed something off about you. He probably wanted to split and had prepared those papers himself. Even if he gets mad, it doesn't matter. He's always been too timid to confront me. With an air of finality, she added, now that you're practically a stranger, you can forget about getting any family money. You tried to charm our parents, but it was all for nothing. I'm cutting ties completely. Don't contact me anymore. Thanks for sending my stuff. Things might be tough from here, but take care. Although Madison's remarks were often irritating, at that moment, I actually felt grateful to her. The next day, relaxing at my parents' house, the doorbell rang suddenly. When I opened the door, Madison burst in, looking frantic. Hurry, get ready, and come back. I've already submitted the divorce papers, but we can still withdraw them, she urged urgently. Calmly, I responded, wait, you really think I want to come back after all this? Don't be so stubborn. A lot happened yesterday. Madison then revealed, when I told Liam I'd filed the papers and kicked you out, he was furious and trashed the house. We didn't know you had an annual income of $3 million and that Liam was actually unemployed. It's not our fault. You never told us. I explained that in college, I co-founded a company and became a board member, which along with executive compensation, stock dividends, and other investments, gave me a substantial income. Liam initially worked, but once he knew about my money, he quit his job and started gambling daily. His parents advised against it, but he wouldn't listen and would get so angry he'd trash the house. I continued. I wanted a divorce but stayed for the in-laws, who'd been good to me. I was waiting for them to move to a safer place first. Madison, now more subdued, shared, my mom called yesterday to say they'd moved to a nursing home using Dad's pension, and their trip was a cover. They left us the house and told us to live independently. Visibly upset and pregnant, Madison pleaded with tears in her eyes. What am I supposed to do now? You're my sister-in-law. Help me out here, as if she were a tragic heroine. I remained calm despite the emotional turmoil and responded plainly, sister-in-law, who gave you the right? You went through my things, found and filed the divorce papers I was preparing, and even sent my belongings to my parents' house. I understand you did it to cut ties with me, as you've said. So, let's end this completely and go our separate ways. Madison's expression changed to one of shock as she quickly defended her stance. I can't imagine living alone with Liam. He'll expect me to work since I've always been a housewife, and I married right out of high school. Now that I'm pregnant, working isn't an option. Whenever I suggest Liam get a job, he gets angry and lashes out. It's too much for me. I've had to hide from him to avoid his temper. She then tried to convince me, if you keep supporting us financially, Liam will calm down. Just go through with the divorce, but continue to support us. I was baffled by her audacity to expect that I would accommodate their needs on her terms. Wanting to end the conversation, I probed further. By the way, do you even know who the father of your child is? You claim to handle household chores easily, yet it seems you leave it all to your family while idling away. I've heard you've been using dating apps, pretending to be younger, and seeking out men. What are your plans after the baby is born, especially since your husband has filed for divorce? Madison was visibly shaken by my questions. How do you know all this? She stammered. I revealed. Your mother told me. She's at a loss about what to do with you. Angered, Madison retorted. That's none of your business. After the baby, I plan to stay at my parents' house. It's my father's house, so I have the right to live there. If I knew you were wealthy, I would have treated you better. You deceived me and made me suffer. You should pay me $3 million as compensation. You can afford it with your income. Fed up with her unreasonable demands, I took out my smartphone. Is that a threat? I'll call the police, I warned. Madison screamed and ran away. Liam, seemingly uninterested or overwhelmed by the situation, hasn't reached out. Locals say he recently started working part-time at a nearby store but is struggling socially. After her ordeal, Madison chose to divorce her husband, who then demanded alimony and child support, leaving her burdened with significant debt. She started working part-time as a cleaner, a job she had never done before. She left me a tearful voice message about how hard work was and pleaded for support, but I did not respond. Madison's twin daughters have distanced themselves from her, and her husband has taken in the newborn, with the family rallying to support the child. I bought an apartment near my workplace and focused on my career, still keeping in touch with my former in-laws, who, having moved to a nursing home, are making new friends and enjoying their lives. Hearing about their well-being brings me genuine joy. I live with my husband, Jackson, who is 3 years younger than me. Last year, we decided to renovate our home, which my father built. It's gotten old and run down over the years, so we wanted to make it more comfortable for the future. The monthly repayment for the renovation is quite high at $18,000, but since I'm an executive at a large company, we figured the loan would likely be approved in my name. Jackson works in management at a mid-sized restaurant and earns less, so the financial responsibility of the loan fell to me. After discussing it, we agreed that I would take on the loan, and Jackson would contribute more to our daily expenses. The renovations transformed our old house into almost a new place, making it a delight to live in the home I grew up in. One day, out of the blue, my cell phone buzzed with unexpected news. I'm getting married. My son Daniel, a 33-year-old middle manager at a leading company, told me. Daniel has always been focused on his studies and work, leaving little time for romantic relationships, so this news was quite surprising. I was eager yet anxious to meet the woman he intended to marry, wondering if she might be taking advantage of his inexperience in love. When we finally met her, she arrived in a white chiffon dress, looking the picture of innocence. I'm Abigail. Please take good care of me, she said politely, charming us right away. She made a great first impression, warmly addressing us as Mom and Dad and expressing her happiness at meeting us. Jackson agreed, whispering to me, "She's a wonderful girl." However, Abigail's overly familiar behavior during our first meeting caught me off guard. She tightly gripped Jackson's hand and looked into his eyes, which seemed too intimate for a first meeting. What are you doing?" I asked, slightly taken aback. Abigail quickly apologized, explaining that she sometimes doesn't recognize personal boundaries, but doesn't mean any harm. Despite the awkward moment, it was clear that Daniel was smitten with her, saying, "Abigail might not get personal space right, but that's part of her charm. She's why we got so close and are now getting married." I came to accept their engagement, and they were swift in making it official. A few weeks later, they submitted their marriage registration, and I hoped for their future happiness. 5 months after their wedding, I came home to find unfamiliar women's shoes at the entrance and the living room scattered with empty alcohol containers. Abigail greeted me cheerily. "Oh, Mother, welcome back." She explained that she had met my husband on his way back from work, and they decided to have some drinks to get closer. I was puzzled about their little party without Daniel, but saw it as a sign of their growing friendship. Before payday, when funds are tight, I suggested we drink at home instead of going out. Why have a party at home? It would have been ideal if Daniel joined us, so we all could have had fun together. It would be better if we gathered at Daniel and Abigail's place instead, I remarked, slightly puzzled by the decision. Abigail, who was noticeably drunk and slurring her words, a stark contrast to her usually precise speech, responded, but her explanation was unclear. I found it odd that she chose to drink just with Jackson, especially during her honeymoon phase with Daniel. Concerned, I asked, Why didn't you call Daniel to join? Abigail tearfully admitted, Daniel is really busy with work, working late nights. I've been feeling very lonely. Jackson, trying to comfort her, gently stroked her head and reassured her, which made me uncomfortable. Jackson, what are you doing? She's Daniel's wife. It's not right. I scolded, feeling uneasy about the situation. Abigail quickly defended Jackson. Oh, don't be so harsh on him. Her response left me surprised and confused. Overwhelmed by the day's events and feeling fatigued, I excused myself to take a bath, asking them to clean up after themselves. I called Daniel to explain what was happening, and he said he'd leave work immediately to pick Abigail up. His prompt response showed his deep affection for her, but I couldn't shake the feeling that their future might be fraught with issues. I planned to discuss their marriage when Daniel arrived. When I returned from my bath, to my surprise, both Abigail and Daniel were still there, enjoying more drinks. Daniel, you drove here, right? Why are you drinking? I questioned. Daniel, now also appearing drunk and cheerful, responded, Actually, Abigail suggested we stay over tonight and drink. Although it was nice that Daniel would be staying, the situation felt abrupt and concerning. Hey Mom, can I drive you? It's okay, Daniel offered, despite having consumed alcohol. Caught off guard by his proposal and their insistence on staying, I was speechless. At that moment, Abigail smirked at me, as if there was a hidden agenda behind her smile. I hoped it was just my imagination. The next day, Abigail apologized profusely for her behavior, expressing deep regret before leaving. This brought some peace, but the incident left a lingering unease. Sometime later, with a serious expression, Jackson dropped a bombshell in the living room. This house will be given to Abigail. If you disagree, let's divorce, he declared. Stunned, I couldn't understand why the conversation about transferring the house to Abigail had come up so abruptly. It was a baffling and troubling turn of events. As I stood bewildered, Abigail told me to leave. Confused, I asked, What do you mean by transferring the house to Abigail? Jackson accused me of making Abigail suffer, which he deemed unforgivable. Despite my protests, he wouldn't listen, convinced by Abigail's tears and stories. Daniel then erupted in anger, calling me horrible. The more I denied their accusations, the more heated they became. Jackson declared they were going to divorce me and demanded that I leave the house, so he could live there with them. When I asked why I should give up my house to Abigail, the response was that transferring the house was a suitable punishment for supposedly hurting her. Despite my objections that Abigail, who had quit her job, couldn't afford the $2,200 monthly loan payment, Jackson was confident. He claimed that changing the loan into Daniel's name would be easy with help from a contact at the financial institution. As the reality set in, I was adamant about not transferring the house. But then Abigail, still crying, pleaded for the sake of their unborn child, which Daniel mentioned to emphasize the need for leniency due to her pregnancy. Overwhelmed by the accusations and demands, I retreated to the bedroom seeking peace. Lying in bed, I wondered if I had unknowingly caused Abigail distress, but my thoughts were interrupted by a discovery, a strand of brown hair on the bed, unusual since both Jackson and I have black hair. Later that night, unable to sleep, I overheard Jackson and a clearly not gone home Abigail in the living room. Their intimate conversation and laughter pierced through my confusion and growing suspicion about the nature of their relationship. As their voices grew more affectionate, with Jackson expressing love and Abigail cautioning him about being discovered, my heart sank. They joked about my possible reactions, dismissing my feelings as if I didn't matter. The strand of brown hair, their secretive actions, and their plans to oust me from my own house became clear. Feeling betrayed and disgusted, I resolved to leave this uncomfortable situation behind. The next day, I faced Jackson, Abigail, and Daniel as if nothing had happened, although I was too shocked to sleep in that bed anymore. So, you finally decided to transfer the house? They asked with a smile. Let's go for the name change procedures. I'll easily pass the loan screening. Daniel was excited, oblivious to the truth. Though it saddened me, I chose not to reveal the truth to my son then, as he wouldn't listen to his mother, heavily influenced by his wife. The following days were filled with the name change and divorce proceedings, eventually completing the process. "This house is no longer yours," Jackson taunted, calling me an old hag as I left, filled with nothing but anger. Despite the pain of leaving my childhood home, I saw this betrayal as an opportunity to create turmoil between them. A month later, I returned, pressing the doorbell. Jackson answered irritably, "What do you want, stranger?" I insisted on discussing something important about Abigail, and mentioning her name got me inside. Inside, I confronted them with photos of Jackson and Abigail together, taken by a detective I hired. "What is this?" they exclaimed. "We're just father-in-law and daughter-in-law. What do you want with these photos?" they defended. I then played an audio recording of their inappropriate conversation, catching them off guard. "Whose child is in your belly, Abigail?" I pressed further. Daniel, shocked, stuttered. "Could it be Dad's?" Abigail's slip of the tongue confirmed it, causing an intense argument between Jackson and Daniel. Amid the chaos, I highlighted, "Haven't I always said I didn't make Abigail suffer? Did you lie to get rid of me?" Daniel, realizing the deceit, was devastated. "I'm the worst. Why didn't I believe my mom?" With all the evidence laid out, Daniel contemplated legal action. Abigail tearfully confessed that her initial genuine feelings for Daniel grew into a desire for our newly renovated, beautiful home. She admitted to getting close to Jackson deliberately to oust me. When I suggested she could have proposed living together from the start, she remained silent, revealing a deep-seated distrust of mothers-in-law rooted in her family's history of conflict. Abigail confessed that she couldn't bear living with a mother-in-law due to the strained relationships in her own family. She believed that removing me was the only way to ensure a comfortable life in a beautiful home. Jackson admitted he knew he was being used but fell for Abigail the moment they met, choosing her over his own family. Daniel, upon hearing this, declared both of them unforgivable. The betrayal led Daniel to file for divorce, and DNA tests confirmed Jackson was the father of Abigail's child. Daniel refused to pay child support and demanded alimony from them. In a twist, even I ended up demanding alimony from Jackson. As Daniel sobbed, I comforted him. The actions of one deceitful person had thrown our lives into chaos. 3 years later, Abigail was living with Jackson in a sort of makeshift family unit, claiming it was for the child's sake. Despite her situation, she faced loneliness and isolation at her child's daycare, unable to bond with other mothers and estranged from her parents who were furious about her choices. Meanwhile, Daniel found himself alone in the house that had caused so much turmoil. He considered selling it but couldn't bring himself to erase my lifelong memories tied to it. Guilty and remorseful, he cleaned out all remnants of Jackson and Abigail, trying to make amends. He apologized for the pain caused and offered me trip tickets, hoping to mend our relationship and be a better son. Although I was not ready to fully forgive, I was open to the possibility of rebuilding our bond, reflecting on the complex weave of emotions and events that had unfolded.